The sun had barely begun its slow descent behind the jagged horizon, splashing the plains with molten gold and crimson shadows, when the lone cowboy settled onto the worn wooden porch of his cabin, his hat low over eyes that had seen years of dust, wind, and the kind of loneliness only the unforgiving frontier could carve into a man's soul. The air smelled of dry pine, scorched earth, and faint smoke from the fire, blending with the scent of distant rain that promised storms beyond the hills. And there she was again, as she had been for weeks, the Apache widow, appearing without announcement, her movements quiet, deliberate, almost like a spirit walking between the living and the dead, tracing the edges of the clearing in the soft twilight, her dark eyes pools of grief, pain, and defiance. At first he had been wary, his hand resting on the grip of his worn revolver, expecting anger, vengeance, or some storm of old violence to crash upon him. But night after night, she remained distant, silent, observing without intrusion, as if she were weighing him, measuring the solitude that clung to him like a second skin, seeing through every layer of hard-earned armor he had built to keep the world away. There was a rhythm to her visits, an unspoken pattern in the way she arrived as twilight faded to night, standing at the edge of the clearing, where the shadows grew long, where the firelight barely reached her face, and though she spoke little, sometimes not at all, the silence itself carried a weight that neither of them could deny, a language of sorrow, of longing, and of shared loneliness that stretched across the emptiness between them. On some nights he would catch the faintest tremble in her hands, a subtle quiver against the cold night air, and feel a pull in his chest that unsettled the steady rhythm of his life. When their eyes met, there was an electric charge, a recognition of wounds too deep to be spoken aloud. And yet in that recognition, something fragile began to stir, a flicker of trust, of understanding, of an impossible hope neither dared name. Slowly, the silence of the frontier became filled with their unspoken stories, the ache of love lost too soon, the cruelty of life that had torn families apart, the ghosts that walked beside them both and would not be denied. He would sometimes speak in low, hesitant words, stories of the years he had survived alone, the harshness of a land that demanded endurance, and the nights spent staring at the stars as if they could answer the questions he dared not voice. And she would listen, her gaze fixed on him, as if trying to unravel the hardened shell around his heart, occasionally offering a soft word, a whisper, a question that revealed the edges of her own suffering. One evening, clouds rolled in heavy and dark, and the first distant grumble of thunder shook the hills. Yet she came closer than ever before, her voice cutting through the wind with trembling confession, revealing the life she had led. After loss, the love she had lost to betrayal, the family she had buried in the shadows of memory, and the promise she could no longer keep. Every word fell upon him like rain on parched soil, stirring feelings he had long buried beneath years of isolation and survival. For the first time in decades, he felt the warmth of connection, fragile and dangerous, yet undeniable. Night after night, he began to anticipate her arrival, the way she moved through the darkness, the hush of her footsteps in the grass, the silent communion of two souls searching for solace in the vast, merciless land. She would sit just beyond the firelight, the wind lifting her hair like smoke around her face, and they would exchange no more than a look or a gesture. Yet those small motions spoke volumes: sorrow, understanding, fear, and the faint spark of trust. And the frontier, harsh and unyielding as it was, seemed momentarily softened by the fragile bond forming between them, even as storms raged across the hills, and the night air carried whispers of danger and the ghosts of their pasts. The cowboy found himself drawn into the rhythm of her presence, feeling its weight settle into the empty spaces he had long thought permanent. The stars blinked overhead, distant and indifferent, yet between them there was a spark of something human, something neither fully understood, but both desperately needed, a connection that dared to challenge the isolation they had carried for so long. Every meeting, every whispered word, every hesitant glance became a thread, weaving a tapestry of trust, sorrow, and longing that could not be ignored. And in the silence, in the space between breaths, he realized something terrifying and exhilarating. He was beginning to care, to feel, to awaken to the possibility that life, even in a world shaped by solitude and pain, could offer something precious, something worth protecting. The wind carried the faint scent of rain and sage, and the cabin, the fire, the surrounding plains seemed to hold their breath as if knowing that the story unfolding between them was only the beginning, that each night carried secrets yet to be revealed, tests of courage yet to come, and choices that would define them both in ways neither could yet imagine. And as the first drops of rain began to fall, soft and insistent, he looked at her standing at the edge of the clearing, and something deep inside whispered that the frontier had drawn them, together not by accident, but by fate, and that the nights to come would demand every ounce of trust, every beat of courage, and every shred of hope they still carried. If you want to witness the next chapter of this story, to see the secrets she holds revealed, and to follow the lonely cowboy as he faces the trials, dangers, and impossible choices the Apache widow brings into his life, subscribe to Frontier Legends, and stay with us as the wild heart of the West beats through love, loss, and destiny.